Welcome to the Must Read interview series sponsored by the Perkins Center for Preaching Excellence. I'm Wes Allen. I'm excited to have with me today Ronald J. Allen, Professor Emeritus from Christian Theological Seminary. Dr. Allen has edited a two-volume series entitled Preaching the Manifold Grace of God. Ron, welcome to Must Reads. And I was wondering if you'd start us out by telling us about the focus of this series and explaining the difference between the two volumes.
Thank you, Wes. It's an honor to be here. I might say that the motivation for putting this two-volume series together is to help preachers think about the theological element of preaching in a disciplined and careful way. Of course, preachers are always doing theology, whether they know it or not, but being able to do theology and to think theologically about preaching with precision can help preachers understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, what they hope will happen, and how the congregation might respond. So it's the nature of the case that different theological families answer these questions in different ways. So volume one is a series of essays, each one of which focuses on the theology of preaching of a particular historical, ecclesial, denominational family. So we start with the Orthodox, the Roman Catholic, the Lutheran, the Reformed, Anabaptists, the Anglican movement, the Wesleyans. We have preaching in the Baptist tradition, an essay on preaching in the African American tradition, the Campbell Movement, preaching amongst the Friends, and Pentecostalism. So each essay traces a little bit of the history of this movement, explains how it understands preaching, and gives a little assessment of how that movement's theology of preaching is playing in the present era.
Now, what about the second volume then?
Well, volume two shifts the focus from historical theological families to contemporary theological families. Now, there's a catch here, of course, which is that emphases from the historic families do play into some of these contemporary families, and I'll say more about that in a minute. But for the purposes of discussion, I identified 18 or 20 contemporary theological families, essays that do things similar to those in the first volume: evangelicalism, post-liberal, neo-orthodox, existentialism, the various racial and ethnic theologies like African American, womanist, feminist, a whole range of contemporary theologies. What I hope is that a preacher will be able to recognize where he or she has come from historically and how he or she has taken a theological turn by preaching through a contemporary theological family.
You know, in addition to the book helping you locate yourself in a camp and finding conversation partners there, it also seems to me helpful to identify yourself over against other camps, to realize, okay, that's not what I do. This is what I do. This is what I think. Do you see that as beneficial as part of this?
Oh, I think that's very beneficial. A lot of literature on preaching is sort of generic, doesn't even pay attention to these different theological nuances. But a preacher can really be quite sharp, can sharpen his or her way of being in the pulpit by being aware specifically of what she or he wants to happen during the sermon and how that differs from what other preachers might be doing. It's a matter of focus.
So you've gathered a large group of scholars to write for this. Where do they come from? Who are they?
Well, there are 30 scholars altogether. They represent a range of senior scholars, mid-career scholars, and early career scholars, men, women, various racial and ethnic communities represented, people who are committed. In almost every case, the chapters are written by people who are members of that theological family and committed to its perspective, although in an open-ended and conversational way.
I can see this book, these two books, as having great benefit, not only for individual preachers, but for classrooms, a way of entering discussions about different theological camps, both for homiletics and theology in general. I just wonder, with all this collection of scholars and writings, is there any one essay in the 2-volume set that really stands out as better than the others?
Well, you're asking a very sensitive question. I could hardly cast cold water on the many fine scholars who did really good work by lifting up just one essay.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe in the second volume, is there not one that stands out among the other? One is especially insightful and faithful to the gospel.
Well, there are several, Wes. They're all faithful to the interpretations of the gospel that are characteristic of the families.
Is the one on existentialism not better than all the others?
Is there an essay on existentialism?
You know, I wrote that.
Oh, you did. How could it possibly have slipped my mind?
Well, Ron, thanks for being with us. You may not get another invitation to Must Read, so I appreciate you taking this time. To all the volumes are both available on all the different book sites out there that you can purchase it from. So, Ron, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Wes.